I'm a United States Postal Service employee, and this is by far the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. A coworker called in one day and said he couldn't make it to work for whatever reason. I was left with the responsibility of delivering all his mail on his route. I was not exactly happy about this, because his route involved going through the old town of the big city that I lived in. This old town was a tourist attraction of sorts. It had very old Western-style buildings, and the street was a dirt road. All of the buildings within this old town were mainly shops for tourists. Most of these buildings required the mail carrier to actually go inside as well and hand-deliver the mail to the various shop owners. That took a lot of extra time and meant you had to converse with most of them as well. I really disliked doing that for the most part. On this day, late in the afternoon, I entered a building and was met with only a staircase. Obviously, just leaving it at the top of the stairs was not an option to deliver the mail, so of course I had to descend this staircase, which was an old winding metal one. It was uncomfortably long, and when I finally reached the bottom, the only thing I saw was a very long hallway with old light bulbs flickering above me. Along the hallway were various doors on both sides, almost similar to what you'd see in the hallway of a hotel. I paused for a second, not knowing what to do at this point. Where was I supposed to deliver the mail to? A second later at the end of the hall though, I saw a man walk out of one of the doors on the left and immediately enter another room on the right. I didn't even have a chance to call out to him before he was already gone. After standing there for a few moments, I decided to walk down the hall. When I finally reached the end, I knocked on the door the man had walked into. Nothing happened, and he didn't open up either. Just then though, at the end of the hall where I'd just come from, I saw the same man walk out of a door on the same side of the hall I was on. He walked into the middle of the hallway and just stood there staring at me. I called out to the man, "Excuse me, sir, I have some mail here for you." He interrupted me by taking a machete out from behind him. At first, I thought this must be a joke, but when he started sprinting towards me, I decided it was not. I entered the room beside me. In this room was an old dark wine cellar from the looks of it. I immediately crawled underneath one of the old racks in which to store wine and thought, this can't really be happening. It was though. The man entered the room soon after, searching for me. He walked past the spot I was hiding in and continued down the rows of wine racks, sniffing the air. I got out from underneath the rack I was under when I felt he was far enough away to not catch me. I went back out into the hall and sprinted back down over to the staircase. Just as I hit the first metal step and began descending, I heard somebody running swiftly down the hall behind me. I skipped steps, going as fast as possible, back up that old staircase until I finally reached the top. I burst outside onto the dirt road and looked behind me. The man did not attempt to go through the door. I got into my service vehicle and sped the hell away from the old town. I later told my boss about this and said he would look into it. He said I shouldn't worry about it any further. I told him I'd never go there again, and he didn't try to argue with me. I was never really into video games when I was a kid. Given how into them my brother was, I always figured they were more for boys than they were for girls. He used to play all these super violent army kinds of games as well, and that stuff didn't really interest me in the least. I remembered though him playing this one game that looked a lot different from all the others he usually played. The art style, the clothes, the really nice music in the background had me transfixed from the second I laid eyes on it. Then, when I asked what he was playing, he replied 3 little words that had become some of the most precious memories of my life: Final Fantasy VIII. It was the game I found myself constantly watching him play, and after he graduated to a PlayStation 2, he gave me his old PS1, and I started to play for myself. I was just hooked for a long time. Without a doubt, my favorite character was Selfie. Selfie is this super cute derpy member of your team who uses these awesome nunchuck things to fight with. She also has the coolest hair of anyone in the game, in my opinion at least. It just so happened that I kind of looked like her too. One day, when my friend and I were doing each other's hair with these new curling irons her mom had bought her, I decided to curl the ends of my hair up like the character. I think it was the first real attempt at cosplay I ever did, so when I learned there were actual groups of people who not only dressed up like video game characters, but met at real places to show off their outfits and costumes, I was so on that. Over the years that followed, I ended up amassing all the items of clothing that she had in her outfit, with the goal of attending the biggest video games expo in the country. It wasn't easy finding the right style of boots, making a dress the perfect shade of canary yellow, but eventually I managed to piece together an outfit that looked exactly like it. The only thing I was lacking was the nunchucks, but then, like a lot of cosplayers, I ended up getting a hold of a cheap plastic toy pair that I painted the same style as hers. Finally, when everything was ready to go, I waited for E3 to come around. My dad drove me and my brother there as a very special shared birthday present. Our birthdays are only a month apart after all. The E3 we went to was one of the first ever to be open to the public too, so it felt like something really special to be able to attend. People were really nice about my outfit, and other Final Fantasy VIII cosplayers were coming up to me and asking for photos. My brother thought it was a total drag having to be my personal photographer for a while. He was an awesome brother though, and took lots of pictures of me with people, so I could remember the whole event for a long time after. He only had so much patience for that kind of thing though, so in the end we agreed to split up and meet up later on. He wanted to go check out all the exhibits he wanted to go see. I was all on my own now, but I was around so many other nice people that I didn't think I was in any danger at all. Besides, the entire place was teeming with security guards and stuff, so it felt like the safest place I could possibly be, also surrounded by many like-minded people, most of which were very nice. The first sign of trouble though came when this one guy came right up to me, told me Selfie was his favorite Final Fantasy character, then asked for a picture with me. For like the 100th time, I stopped a passerby, gave them my digital camera, and asked if they would take a picture of me and the person I was with. When they were lining up the shot though, the guy started whispering in my ear, "You know, you look really, really cute in that outfit." Just as the person took the picture and was handing me back my camera, he started to fondle my butt under my skirt, so hard I actually yelped out in pain. I turned around instinctively, throwing a slap in the guy's direction. He backed off so quick though that it missed. People jumped in between us. "Hey, what's going on here?" I was just shouting stuff like, "He grabbed me! This pervert just touched me!" Only with way more curse words and stuff like that. One of the guys that jumped in pushed the man away, then came over to see if I was okay. I ended up venting a little bit about how I'd had such an amazing time, until this ass grabber came along to spoil it. The guy told me there were way too many guys like that at cons, but even so, they were still few and far between. He did the nicest thing ever after. He offered to walk me around the convention hall as a kind of bodyguard to make sure it didn't happen again. I mean, the guy was tall, handsome, and seemed like he was some sort of knight in shining armor type, so of course I said yes to the idea. We went walking together around the con after. This guy happened to be dressed like a samurai with some kind of sword with him. I wanted to say it looked like the vampire killer blade from some movie, but I know he wasn't that specific character. When I asked him, he laughed and told me he was supposed to be a guy from some anime. Obviously, the sword he had with him wasn't real, but he talked about how cool it would be if I had an actual pair of nunchucks. That's when he turned to me and said that as much as he wasn't allowed to bring any real weapons along with him to the convention hall, he had brought along things he usually kept in his trunk for personal protection. And there just so happened to be a pair of nunchucks in there. I thought that was just about the coolest thing I'd ever heard, and so I was impressed when he told me about all the different martial arts he did, hence why he owned such a random thing. He then asked me if I wanted to go out to his car and check them out together. I didn't hesitate at all. After all, he'd been the perfect gentleman so far, so why would I expect anything to change? We carried on chatting, and then as we walked out to his car, with me asking him if the things were heavy and how long he'd been training with them, all his answers seemed super genuine and honest. When we got to his car though, after walking through the parking lot for a while, I was more excited to see this real-life thing than I had been about the whole E3 thing in the first place. Only when he opened his trunk, I didn't see anything in there. I looked at him confused, expecting him to have a similarly confused look on his face, but instead his look was one that literally made my stomach drop. He was completely expressionless, except for this intense look in his eyes. When I saw that, I knew immediately I had just made a huge mistake. Next thing I know, he'd grabbed me by the neck and was trying to shove me into the trunk of his car. I let out this manic screech of pure terror. I screamed longer and louder than I ever had in my life before or since. Not even real words, just a wail of absolute horror. I realized all that protectiveness he'd been showing me was just an act. The same guy that had warned me about all these weirdos at the con, about how there were only a few of them and not to let it ruin the experience. Well, he was one of them, and he'd been intending on kidnapping me from the very start. He actually managed to shove me all the way into his trunk at one point, and if it wasn't for me sticking a leg out at the last second, he would have trapped me in there for good. It was both kind of a blessing and a curse though. The force with which he brought the trunk down on my leg made me feel sure he'd just broken it. It was completely numb. I guess the adrenaline was staving off the pain for the moment. That bought me a little more time to try and fight my way out of that trunk. But then the more I fought, the more I realized it was no good. He was bigger and stronger than me. It was only a matter of time before he managed to completely overpower me. By far though, the worst part was when he told me, "Don't make me shut you up." He'd been saying shut up and be quiet almost the whole time, but when he finally said that "don't make me," I realized it was either go along with the abduction or he might actually kill me in order to not get caught. What choice did I have though, other than carry on trying to save my own life? If I hadn't, I wouldn't be around to tell you this story. I guess the point you're wondering though is how I got out of such a situation. And honestly, I did nothing by myself. It all came down to a stroke of pure luck. It just so happened that a latecomer to the event had been driving around through the parking lot looking for a parking space, and just so happened to go through the same section we were in and hear my screams. It kinda makes my mind boggle at how the universe had to align that perfectly so someone was right there. Aside from that single latecomer, the parking lot was completely deserted of any other people. If he'd went out to his car a little earlier or later, or if that guy and his kids hadn't been stuck in traffic that morning after driving in from out of state, there's a good chance I wouldn't have survived the weekend. After running towards the sound of my screams, the guy managed to scare away the man trying to kidnap me, who took off when he realized he'd been discovered. The rest is kind of a blur of crying, talking to cops, and then driving to the hospital to get my leg checked out. The only really good news was that the cops managed to trace the guy's rental car to his dad because it was rented in his name. That's how they managed to arrest him before charging him with attempted kidnapping. That was my first real cosplaying experience, and it was completely ruined by some complete psycho who took advantage of my vulnerability to gain my trust enough to attempt to kidnap me. Who knows what he had in mind after? It took me a long time to even attempt to cosplay again, as the whole thing made me feel overwhelming anxiety whenever I so much as looked at a costume. This year, I'm finally able to wear it again, but I honestly don't think I'll be able to wear it in public or at any kind of convention anytime soon. It's not just what happened to me either. It's that I've heard a lot of different stories about how female cosplays make a certain kind of guy act a certain kind of way. It's almost like when they see the fictional character, they assume we're not real people ourselves. That's the way I've come to see it anyway. It's not just with the actions either. I see all kinds of horrific comments directed towards female cosplayers on a variety of different websites too. It makes me think it's something you should just enjoy on your own, or with a circle of like-minded folks online. Communities that can easily be policed and controlled. Again though, that's just the way I see it. Either way, I'm going to be very careful in the future. Honestly, as scary as the ordeal was, not being able to express myself in the way I wanted after is the thing that made me the most sad. I've been going to San Diego Comic-Con for most of my adult life, but the first time I ever went, way back in 2010, something seriously crazy happened before one of the panels. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I love everything about the universe and the lore, and although the movies haven't always been the highest quality, I was excited to catch the Afterlife panel in Hall H. This was about the same time I found out the next panel was going to include Seth Rogen, and it was for some new comedy called Paul or something. I'm pretty indifferent to Simon Pegg, but I was a big Seth Rogen fan back then, so I figured I'd stick around and check it out a bit. Hall H was absolutely jam-packed at that time. Every single seat was taken, so like many others, I found myself standing at the back of the hall without anywhere to sit. Me and a friend of mine were just standing around, casually discussing where the Resident Evil franchise was headed, when out of nowhere, we heard blood-curdling screams not too far away. All heads instantly turned in the direction of where the scream was coming from, only to see a man with blood streaming down his face. He had a hand over his eye, and right next to him, a bunch of people were attacking this one kid who looked like he just stabbed the other one in the face with something. The whole back of the hall erupted into chaos, with people basically sitting on the kid who lashed out, while others sprinted to get security and the cops. Eventually, the cops showed up and put the kid in cuffs. As he was being let out, I noticed the weirdest little detail about him. He was wearing a blue Harry Potter t-shirt. I don't know why that stuck out with me so much. I guess because it was the last thing I expected him to be wearing. That whole franchise is so innocent and positive. At least, I think so anyway. So, to have a kid that was a fan of that stuff be so violent out of nowhere was super disturbing to me. Then, when I learned that it was all apparently down to one kid sitting too close to the other, that it was all just some dumb disagreement over seat space, that was ultra disturbing to me too. I mean, what a thing, to blind someone for life over a random seat space in a convention hall, all for some half-assed sci-fi movie made by some random British guy. That is pure insanity. That's the most messed up thing I've ever seen at Comic-Con, as it tends to be a really chill and positive experience. Honestly though, I always wonder if the next year I attend, I'm going to see another nerd rage incident just like that. Sorry for the long story, but I can't exactly figure out this person's motive. One night I was in bed with my boyfriend, and it was around 1:30 a.m. or so. All of a sudden I get a text from a random number saying, "Is this my name? Sorry for messaging you late and out of the blue like this, but I don't think my boyfriend's name is being honest with you, and I needed to talk to you." We exchanged a few texts, and basically they were accusing my boyfriend of cheating on the both of us. Obviously, I was pretty annoyed. Bear in mind, it was also June 2020, bang in the middle of coronavirus lockdown in the UK. We'd spent all day, every day together since March. He denied it, of course, and insisted he didn't know who this person was. The same number started texting him as well, angry texts, calling him a lying rat. It was not looking good for the boyfriend. But then, this is where it started to get weird. The person refused to give any specifics, wouldn't tell me their name, what my boyfriend had done, even my boyfriend's name, just that he was a liar, and I was an idiot for believing him. Whenever I would ask why, they would just reply with vague, angry, threatening texts. Their grammar and spelling was good, but they seemed to be using slang words from the local area. We assumed maybe it was some kids who'd found our numbers off Facebook or something and were trying to have a laugh, so we tried ignoring it. Then, nothing else. That was until my boyfriend got a text the following afternoon asking him to meet that person at a local social club for some company. Me and a friend hopped in the car and went down there to investigate, only no one was there, and the club had been closed because of COVID. We still couldn't help but feel, though, like we were being watched. It was so weird. A few days ago, after a while, the same number started texting me again. This time it was all weird. It almost felt like it was a different person texting me. They also seemed a lot angrier with me now because I didn't believe them. Then they started to text me stuff like, "You're so dull. You know I saw him leaving your house earlier." I said something funny like, "Where's my house then?" They replied with the exact street address and street name. They also knew various things about us, like the fact my boyfriend had been in the army. I called them loads, but it would always just ring twice and cut off immediately. I tried searching the number on WhatsApp and a few social media websites, but nothing. Only on Instagram would the number come up, with the location of a film company in Ralt, Netherlands. Then, when I'd Google the number, its provider was something I'd never heard of before. Looks like it was probably a fake number. They never asked for any money or anything like that. I don't know why someone would go through that much effort to try and wind us up. In fact, the last text they sent was, "Okay, I'll be seeing you soon." Creepy. Any advice you can offer?